Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mubari's podcast. This is Hashmat Mubari's your host, and today it's a real honor to welcome Anna to Mubari's podcast. Anna is a senior American diplomat who served for decades with the United States Department of State, including as deputy chief mission in Afghanistan. And her career has focused on some of the most complex geopolitical and security challenges facing the United States. Anna, it's a pleasure to have you tonight with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you once again for joining us and providing this great opportunity to have this great conversation with you. But I would like to first start from here that Ayatollah Khomeini is dead, which he lead the Iran since 1989, and his leadership shapes the Iran's nuclear policy, regional influences, and so much more. I would like to ask and start first from here that what will be the next step of United States? Is Washington considering supporting external opposition groups or focusing on Iran's internal transition process?
Thank you so much. I feel like these are questions that it would be very hard to give a full answer to because events are moving really quickly. My personal sense, and I am outside of the government, is that they will do something that is easy for them to start with and see how far they can go, which is the model they're using in Venezuela. In other words, that they would work with internal transition figures and see whether the United States can achieve its policy goals with those people before they act to work with external opposition.
You know, dear Anna, that in recent years we have seen major instability in the region, especially in the Middle East, like Bashar al-Assad, has faced serious internal conflict and regional pressures, and now Iran's top leadership has changed, these events suggest that possible shifts in the regional powers dynamics. I would like to ask your perspective about is a new political order emerging in the Middle East, or could these developments create, a deeper instability?
On the one hand, of course, what you say is correct, but on the other, when you think about it, it seems a little strange to say that when somebody leaves power after 30 years, that that's a sign of instability. Because in fact, we in certain countries have been very accustomed to leaders who are in power for, let's say, 4 years or 8 years, and more than 20 years at a time is a long time. So I think that the leadership in the Middle East, in a way, is having to be responsive to the people. This could lead to more instability because there are power structures that can feel challenged. And I think that what the United States has done is not excusable. I don't agree with the effort that they made, the bombing, the killing of Iran's leader. I personally do not agree with it, and it did not come as a part of a proper process within the United States. So if there is instability in the Middle East, if there are wider implications of what just happened, the US, its people, the people of the region, Europe, etc., people are going to have to live with the consequences. And I have to say that instability is a very strong possibility.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. But now, I would like to move to Afghanistan and Pakistan, and I think you were one of the top diplomats in the Kabul embassy. And since last week, tensions and clashes between Afghanistan's current authorities and the Pakistan have escalated. You know, there are different narratives about the causes, including the rule of TTP and the border security concerns, and even some regional diplomatic relations, such as Afghanistan's engagement with India. From your perspective, what were the main factors that brought the both the current regime in Afghanistan and Pakistan into conflict? And was it primarily the TTP issue, or shifting diplomatic alignments such as Kabul and the New Delhi relations, or any other strategic elements?
I think those are both really key elements. The TTP, it's a very recent set of attacks. Our thing that is something that Islamabad felt an absolute need to respond to. But at the same time, you are absolutely correct that the many efforts that India and the Taliban were making to get closer to each other and to form, in a way, a common sort of alliance that Pakistan can very well see as being against it, that is an incredibly important factor. You know, a friend of mine said that he has heard that the bottom line for Pakistan is that they want Afghanistan to remain dysfunctional. That's their preferred, way that the country is neither strong, nor weak completely, and that it simply is not very functional and that it depends on Pakistan. So that all their policies are aimed towards that goal. So that's one person's analysis, and it does sound like a reasonable one. So when you see these attacks, I believe that Pakistan is sending the strongest of signals that they are not going to allow the Taliban to grow stronger through a relationship with India, and they're not going to allow them to grow stronger by hosting the TTP.
Yeah. And given the long history of mistrust between the Kabul and Islamabad and the risk of a wider regional consequences, the situations appears fragile. Mm, do you see any major political change or possible regime transformation in Afghanistan as a result of this conflict? As we can see, it's not, something small. And as I have read some newses before our conversation, the actually the Pakistan continued their attacking in the Kabul.
It's really enormous, and the people of Kabul and those other cities are paying a price for a completely irresponsible policy, many irresponsible policies by the Taliban, but this one in particular to allow Afghanistan's territory to be used by the TTP, by Al-Qaeda, by a number of other organizations that are all destabilizing Afghanistan's neighbors and the wider region. And the Taliban is allowing it. And they are bringing some kind of collective punishment onto the people of Afghanistan for their decisions. And this is, of course, coupled with all of the other acts that the Taliban have taken, which have punished the people of Afghanistan. I don't know that I see a direct line to some kind of change in the Taliban regime. They have kept their power through repression and force, and they still have that capability to repress the population. And I'm not 100% sure that Pakistan truly wants to replace the Taliban. But the day may come that they decide that they do, and Pakistan is absolutely capable of acting against the Taliban senior leadership.
Mhm. And as I have also heard that the President Trump also supported the Pakistani's attack in Afghanistan. And the current regime in Afghanistan today is not simply a conservative government. They have dismantled, I'm sure better than media institutions, arrest one from public life, silence dissent, and imposed a systematic repression on everyone. And from a diplomatic and strategic perspective, how should the international community define the current regime system in Afghanistan as a de facto authority to be managed or as an illegitimate regime that must be contained?
Well, I would personally be, if I were in the government, which I am not, I would be advising the strongest possible measures to label the Taliban as illegitimate and to work harder, as I've recently published an article saying that the time is now to work on strengthening the voices of all Afghans who want a political solution and working to through the United Nations, which is the best that we have, uh, to help amplify the voices of what Afghans want for their own country. And that means, I would say, a very extensive consultation process, as much as possible with Afghans inside the country and also those who live outside, who are in exile, but who want to work for the welfare of the country. So the international community's role is not, I think, to get involved in bombing. It should be to tell Pakistan not to bomb civilian targets, absolutely. I don't take very seriously any kind of interest by the Trump administration. They were simply responding to the idea that somebody was, you know, conducting bombing in defense of their own country. The Trump administration, of course, is going to say that they're in favor of that. Um, but at the end of the day, the people who have to decide what Afghanistan looked like, those people are Afghan people. And it's the job of the international community to give those people a platform.
Yes, of course. The Afghans should take, uh, action, and the only thing and the only hope that we have right now is not from United States of America. Actually, it's not from European countries or international community. Now all the eyes are on Afghan people. And I would like to mention also this, that much of international discussions reduce Afghanistan crisis to women's education. Actually, that is a critical issue, and that is critical, but it's not, the whole picture. It's not the whole story. Actually, as someone who's living currently inside Afghanistan, we are facing economic collapse, mass poverty, separation of minorities, attacks on civil liberties, banking paralysis, and institutional distractions. Young people are killing themselves and they're hopeless. There is no job opportunity. Why has global disorders, in your idea, there narrowed Afghanistan crisis to a single human rights issue instead of, addressing the broader structural collapse caused today by the current regime inside Afghanistan?
Um, I mean, that's a really fair question. Why? The international attention is hard to pin down on things that are complicated. They often seek a simple narrative. The role of women within Afghanistan was sort of famous because it was a problem that started before the international, intervention, something that people learned about in the 1990s. So it is still in the collective imagination. But you're right that the problems are sort of huge. They're intersectoral, they're intersectional, and there are people who are really smart about some of these issues, who make this point that you're making, and we should all be paying closer attention to that. So I would hope that you see that the attention on women's education is not meant to be the only thing that people talk about, but it is the simpler thing that people talk about. And it's a way, one would hope, like you're doing now, to open and widen the conversation so that people understand this is in a context of so many other rights and so many other necessities. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I just agree with what you're saying.
From inside Afghanistan, many people feel the world has simply moved on and people are selling their belongings to survive, selling even their children, their daughters, their young son to make a living. And youth, as I have said before, see no future. Actually, the young people are killing themselves, specifically young ladies. They see no future and professional are leaving. And the hunger is unfortunately widespread. There is no job opportunity, as I have said before. I would like to also ask this one, that why does Afghanistan no longer command sustained strategic urgency for major powers? Was Afghanistan really always viewed as transactional rather than transformational in global policy?
I think unfortunately the answer is yes, that it was viewed as transactional. I also think that it's not something you may want to hear, but that there are many, many other countries where some of the same problems that you've described exist, and people are very insular. They think about themselves. And so the answer is that the international community is not necessarily ever going to keep sustained attention on any single country. And it is selfish as a group of people who think about themselves, about their own nation states, and it is a function of sort of sadly who we are as humans. We are not all that empathetic. And I am sad about this. I do not wish, I wish it was otherwise, but I teach classes here in the US with young people, and their horizon of what they think about is very reduced. It's very much their own lives, their own needs, their own thinking. So we don't have a good tradition of that kind of empathy and focus that you're describing.
Hmm.
I would expect very little from the international community, as you say, but I'm not going to let us off the hook. I'm not going to excuse it. I do want there to be a very strong Afghan voice that says all the things that you're saying, and strong and unified.
Hmm. Um,
I,
while Western
yeah.
engagement has decreased in Afghanistan, regional actors are increasing connected with the current regime inside Afghanistan, often driven by maybe some security concerns or economic interests like China, like Russia, or Iran and India. Uh, Diana, do you see regional normalization efforts as a pragmatic stability building or as a geopolitical accommodation that strengthens the authoritarian consolidation in Afghanistan?
Well, in Afghanistan's region, there are a number of countries who are themselves run in an authoritarian fashion. And so they are not necessarily going to walk away from the Taliban because of the Taliban system of governance. It's not that logical to say that they would speak up for human rights that they don't observe themselves. And so, very realistically, many of Afghanistan's neighbors are interested in some kind of economic benefit from Afghanistan. Again, it's not okay. And hopefully, what we're seeing is that the Taliban has made a series of incredibly bad decisions and choices and statements, which has caused even a country like Russia, the only country to formally recognize the Taliban, to issue a warning last week about how the Taliban is hosting terrorists. I think you have this power vacuum of the other voice from Afghanistan. The region needs to know what is the alternative to the Taliban.
And as a last part of our meaningful conversation, I would like to have your opinion in this part also. That from a diplomatic perspective, how do you see the next 3 or 5 years of Afghanistan? As I have said before, the economic collapse, there is no institutionals, the schools and universities are closed, and there is no connection with the outside the world. How do you see the next 3 to 5 years of Afghanistan?
I can't possibly answer that as well as you do. You know what it's like inside. I am not saying that, the Taliban's repression is horrifying, but at the same time, the people of Afghanistan have to have some kind of voice to tell, each other that what's happening is unacceptable. The Taliban, for example, collect taxes and then you don't see anything from it because they're using those taxes to pay for their own security forces. There aren't any jobs. So I would say leave all the human rights, conversation. It's a very important one. But even if you leave it to the side, that's the conversation. They're taking money from the citizens and they're not giving them anything. So if a government, a ruling group does that over time, I assume they don't have the loyalty of the people. So I don't know what it looks like in 3 to 5 years, but I hope that the people who need help are going to ask for it.
Of course. But as a last part of this conversation, I would like to have your message for the woman inside Afghanistan and outside Afghanistan, for those who has lost their hope in the last 4 to 5 years. I would like to have your message to them.
I can't possibly understand how horrifying and sad and difficult life is on a daily basis. I hope in every way that you can find some joy wherever possible to give yourself enough of a reason to keep going. I believe in my heart it will be better. I also believe that your strength is going to form the foundation of a movement within Afghanistan that is going to ask for that better day. So please, please keep strong if you possibly can, keep joyful if you possibly can. And please know that many people outside of Afghanistan, we are sending our love, we are sending our prayer, and we are sending our admiration for who you are and what you are doing.
Thank you so much, dear professor, for joining us, and thank you so much for taking time and for this meaningful conversation.